Hello and welcome to the Womb-Centered Healing Podcast. I'm Sama Morningstar. Say my own name right. See what I was telling you? I'm getting a little giddy, all these interviews. I'm Sama Morningstar, and I have with me Tenci and Soul Expression of Ufulu Child. Thank you so much for joining me, you two. And you both together are guest speakers in the Embodied Shakti Summit as well. So we thought we'd come on here as well on the podcast and get to know you more and have more opportunities to talk about womb-centered healing with you and possibly how that weaves together with Embodied Shakti practices. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself more in depth and share about what womb-centered healing means to you.
Well, very, very happy to be here again with you. Thank you for having us. Like you said already, I'm so with my Tenci, and we are Ufulu Child. Ufulu by itself means freedom, and our is to create culture that's moved by freedom. Moved is misspelled. It's spelled as an acronym, MUVED, and it stands for Moving to Unite the Virtue in Everybody Dedicated. And basically, for me personally, how that whole purpose ties into womb-centered healing and what that means to me is that, well, the womb is a center for, first of all, rapid growth, super rapid growth, both, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, all of the super rapid growth. And by super rapid, there's no comparison, right? There's just nothing that grows like it grows when it's in its first stages of growth. And so not only that, where I kind of correlated with how one matures and grows into their own freedom, but also it means to me that going back to your originalness, thank you, original nature, and not necessarily picking apart and nitpicking at yourself, but seeing and exposing to yourself things that aren't original to you, so that you can begin to heal from the root and from the origins from which you came. And that's kind of what it means to me.
Right. That's that recognition of, my goodness, this is not original to me. I took this on from somewhere, and being able to differentiate that is a big part of the womb-centered healing work that I do with my clients, because we take things on. As soon as we start growing super fast inside the womb, we start learning things from our mother and making them our own, sort of piling them on top or molding ourselves to fit the reality that we're being presented with in our mother's womb. And that carries on throughout our childhood until we get to be adults and we realize, wait a second, who am I really? Am I this, what's been added to my essential self, or what is my essential self? And we start to question that, and then we can go into, and that's a very womb process of differentiating, because the womb knows how to say, okay, this is the baby, this is the mother, and let's gently separate the placenta from the womb in a healthy environment and get that baby to move on out and become its own person, right? Our wombs know how to do that. And we know how to do that as babies. Babies are very active in that process. And yet there's things that get in the way of that. We've lost that. We get tangled and tied up and bound up. And so that's beautiful, the way you express that. So thank you. And I can't wait to hear what you're going to add to this, Tenci.
Yes, so I'm Hortensia Campbell, Tenci of Ufulu Child, and in terms of what when I think of womb healing, I think of like a point where you're creating, you're not creating something that's not of you, but it's kind of like you're coming back home to who you truly are, behind it all. And it's like a seat of creation. So all those possibilities, all those dreams, all those visions that you had, this is also the incubation realm, um, like a transitionary period is also how I think of it. Um, as adults, like we have a lot of periods and pockets of our time where it feels like we're in transition between this stage and this one. And like we love to recreate ourselves. And so when I think of womb healing, part of that equation, in addition to really being observant of what is our essential self, what is the essence of me, and honoring that, would also be, okay, so now that all being okay with you for yourself is also, well, so some people might talk about like manifestation and things like that. Um, yeah, that's what's calling to me, in addition to what Soul said.
Okay, I the reception kind of got patchy there in the last part of what you said. That often happens when we're saying something really potent, and the electronic devices get a little bit like, whoa, somehow. So I would like to ask you to repeat this last part that you said. You were talking about this. The transition that we do as adults from
Yes.
one way of being to another, and then I couldn't really hear clearly everything that you said
Absolutely.
after that.
So I was saying that as adults, it's beyond just us coming to the point of understanding and fully observing and allowing ourselves to be our essential selves and understanding what that is for ourselves. It's also, we go through different pockets of time throughout our journey where we love to reinvent ourselves. We love to play and create. And we have all these dreams and these visions, and we love to see them come to fruition, and really fleshing out what do I desire, what do I want for myself, or what is my intention, and what would be the greatest expression of me. And really playing with those things is also in my definition of womb healing, that transitionary period of nurturing yourself and allowing yourself to unfold into something new, kind of like the cocoon and the butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of womb
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we have phases in our life, and we can start to understand those phases when we look at the natural rhythms and cycles of the planets, our planet, the sun. We all are familiar with the monthly cycle that originally was based on women's menstrual cycles and the lunar cycles. And then we also have the daily cycle of the sun rising and setting. And we have the seasonal cycle of the earth spinning around the sun and having different seasons throughout the year. And then we have all of the astrological cycles of where we are in relationship to other planets and constellations and things like that, that are all influencing our development and and some say, who follow astrology, our essence can be discovered. One way to discover our true essence is to look at the configuration of the planets and the universe and all of that when we were born, and possibly even when we were conceived. And there's various systems to really get in touch with what our essence truly is. And then these rhythms and cycles can map out those transitional phases oftentimes. So for example, we have various transitions during, you know, of course, of birth, life transitions, right? The conception, gestation, and birth, that's our first experience of that transition from being pure spirit to being in a physical form. And then there's the transition from being a child to becoming an adult, and there's various transitions along the way. And then as young adults, we have that transition of time, like in our 20s is a very womb like time of who am I, right? I'm leaving my family that's been telling me who I am, or hopefully giving me space to discover.
Finding what is freedom for me.
Yeah, exactly. But so away from the family unit, saying what is freedom for me, possibly, or hopefully with the support of the family at the young adult. And then there are these further transitions later in adult life, like in our late 20s, early 30s, the Saturn return. Saturn returns to the place that it was when we were born in relation to us. So that Saturn is all about the structures of our essence of who we are and what we're meant to be doing. So that period of time in the late 20s, early 30s, it's like, okay, I really got to get serious. I was experimenting, playing around with this stuff. Now I'm really got to become who I am. And then that happens again later in life. After you have all this time in your 30s and 40s to possibly build your life around who your essence is. If you're a little off course, then you get another time of like, wait a second, we got to realign with Saturn and what it's telling us. So there's those phases. And so this womb-centered healing can be a really great, you know, that kind of creating a cocoon around ourselves to become what we're dreaming into is very powerful. So I'm glad you talked about that. And I would love to hear both of your experiences of times when that type of cocooning or allowing to blossom, right? Because oftentimes we might have a goal, but if we're looking at that goal, we're not allowing a full freedom of transformation. If we're too much
Right.
pushing on the goal to happen quickly, right? Or having a timeline for the goal. But there's more in a womb, in the womb, there's definitely a timing, but there's no pushing or poking or prodding that's very beneficial. We just have to let that process take its own course. So I'm curious about your experiences of that kind of transformation in your lives.
Yeah, well, you know, the interesting thing about the way we approach things and how we teach or point, you know, the pointers that we give in terms of dealing with cycles, and not dealing with in the cliche sense, because that has kind of a negative connotation, but just being with the cycles of life and the cycles of individuality as well. The funny thing about the way that we approached it is, if you can't do it fresh, meaning if you can't approach a cycle without your intellectual knowledge, then don't approach the cycle. Meaning, you know, if you can't do it fresh, you can't do it. If there's no um, in trust, the cycle will then it's not really help. Be To remain one as you are, which is the formless spirit. You could some say the observer, or just source consciousness, and letting the cycle take its place, so that you kind of watch the movie of me, or watch the play of the I, the sense I am. And you could say, like, you know, especially right now, I'm in my late 20s. So you could say right now, I'm about what my actually desire for the later or middle and later parts of my own life and my own understanding, where I'm in a space that I can resist out of my control. also I don't have to push myself in any particular way that, you know, I feel on Wednesday I should go this way. Friday, I might feel like I should actually go this way. So find that of remaining as you are and not as what you think you want to be, because that can change. You know, that's not a reliable train of thought. You know.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was a little patchy in what you were saying, but let me just see if I was able to piece it together. So it sounds like what you're talking about is that there's a way that we can connect fresh with how we're feeling in the moment, sort of setting aside or deprioritizing any preconceived notions or ideas about how we should be on any particular day, even scheduling things ahead of time. That's a challenge always for me, because I, like you say, when Friday shows up and I'm feeling a certain way, the schedule that I planned last week for Friday might not fit the way I'm feeling, right? And so that freshness then, it sounds like, is what you're talking about. And I'm curious, and you were starting to say something about now you're in your late 20s and you're looking at who you want to be for the rest of your life, which I think is a perennial question, but particularly in that late 20s Saturn return, where you're getting a sense after all of our experimentation in our 20s, we get a sense for who do I really want to be? What did I just do and experience? And what parts do I want to keep and develop? And what parts are, no, not that. And in each moment deciding that. And so I'm curious what some of the discoveries you're having about that are for you personally. Like, you know, what are your what are the things that you want to keep and develop, and what are the things that are falling to the wayside?
Awesome. So firstly, the most surprising is I'm a lot less interested in creating new music, which I thought for the longest time was going to be my number one thing that I always would be so in love with. But I found over years that actually I'm just more of a writer. I like to write words that or read them, and that was big for someone that I've been making music and performing music for over 10 to 13 years now. And so, you know, I really thought that's where my heart is. But it turns out what you love is not always what you're passionate about. Making and performing music is something I love to do. What I love to do is write interesting stuff. And that has translated to journaled since like middle school, which is just crazy to me. Also, I've been writing a lot of prose and a lot of not rhymey material, a lot of very philosophical yet simple, just trains of thought, and really, coming into not pushing myself to fit into a box of my passions. I'm doing, and it's like, no, I'm doing what I love, and I'm allowing the space for if what I love to do changes naturally.
Beautiful. Yes. And that's such a you know, when we become our own best mothers, right? Because that's a very motherly quality of allowing a child's passions and interests to change. At least in my book of motherly, the ideal mother is the one who allows my passions and interests and what I love to change and grow and evolve over time. And so that kind of motherly love is a very much womb centered, healing way of being towards ourselves, instead of saying, no, you have to do what you decided you liked 2 weeks ago. You have to carry through with that till the bitter end and make it produce something, you know? I'm sorry, what was that you said?
For the rest of your life,
For the rest of your life.
The rest of your life, right? So beautiful. So I'd love to hear your reflections on all of this as well, Tenci.
Mid-20s, and for me the biggest piece of it has been getting beyond the need to be something in particular for other people, and just allowing myself to somebody say, okay. So yeah, just me personally being in my mid-20s now, really starting to decode and decipher what it looks like for me to unfold into who I want to be, who I am as is, without being somebody's savior, or without being the person that's always helping others and not looking back this way. Really, this has been like an incubation time for me in my life of really sifting through what is important to me. Okay, 10 seconds left in life. What do I choose? Instead of just going with automatically, oh, I should be doing this because such this, that, and the third reason why that person over there said that I should be doing this. But instead really starting to come home to what it means for me to do something for me, and what it means for me to be myself fully, in all ways of me being myself and throughout my life, no matter what I'm doing. So I was always the person that would plan everything out. So when I was little, I knew what I was going to be. I knew what I was going to be. I knew or maybe around this age, I was going to have this kind of company, and I was going to do this, that, and all that. And my degree was going to be this, and stuff like that. Now, breaking out of that habit, since that was a habit, that was always a habit that formed like when I was little, of feeling like I needed to be the perfect. I needed to be the best at whatever I'm doing. So I need to compete. I need to be that the one that's on top of everything, no matter what, the responsible one. I have everything, and I'll always be smiling, no matter how crazy things are. That was always like the pattern, the habit, the thing that was instilled in me that I picked up and claimed for myself when I was little. And that carried through adulthood. And now it's like busting through all of those preconceived notions of this is what it is, and there's no possibilities outside of this. And knowing that that's not true, that there's infinite possibilities, and that me as myself, me as my own essence, I am just so magical, and just really feeling empowered to be vulnerable with myself, to fully feel like what we were talking about before we started recording this episode, but to fully feel all of the ups and downs, all of the hesitations, all of the resistance, fully feel along the journey, instead of saying, nope, I have it together and it's over there in that box.
Yeah, because that attitude of having a plan, having it together, following the plan, pushing through. People often talk about pushing through regardless of how they feel, how exhausted they are, what their body's needs are telling them they need, and all of that. What was that?
And that's how you just make yourself sick.
That's how we make ourselves sick, and that also is how we numb ourselves. I know that keeping busy and keeping to the plan and having a strict, rigid plan like that is one coping mechanism that people develop to numb ourselves from feeling the pain of something that might have happened in the past, early childhood, feeling neglected, all of that. I know myself, I developed a very strong caretaker model of identity for myself, because my caretakers were really incapacitated and unable to really care for me. They did the best that they could, but there were a lot of ways that they weren't even taking care of themselves, and their relationship was really abusive with each other, and that trickled down to me, and so that model of relating and all of that made me feel like I had to take care of them and somehow bring the medicine or the something that was going to make this situation better as a young child. So that's where that idea of needing to be the best at school, get the best grades, be the savior, be the one who always has the solution, who always has the source of the joy and the love. And because if you didn't do that, if I didn't do that, there wouldn't be that in my life. I had to create it and give that and be that for everyone in my life. And it's only now in my 40s, even though I've reflected on that pattern throughout my life, but it's only now in my late 40s where I'm realizing how that's been perpetuated throughout all of my choices in life. So I'm just giving you a little warning in your mid-20s that reflection, I went and did very radical things and made very radical choices based on my true essence, or so I thought, as the two of you are doing now. And all throughout my 30s, because of these questions that you're so wonderfully asking, and then we get to another round of that questioning. Did I really let go of those patterns? It's like an endless cycling around to say, how did that scab come back onto that wound? And how can I nourish it to actually heal at a deeper and deeper layer? And so it's so great that you're sharing about that process for yourselves and this sense of womb-centered healing, in that sense of allowing ourselves to become and to explore and to experience and not be stuck on any kind of a timeline. And that, there's so many societal influences that are telling us we need to be on a timeline. We need to have, now later in life, it's not so much of a concern, at least it wasn't for me, in the 20s, because you seemed like you have all this time to do it. But now approaching 50, it's like the societal thing. You should have been saving for your retirement all this time. You shouldn't be doing what you want to do and love to do now. You should have been working really hard so that you can do what you want to do when you get older and you retire, right? And I've never lived by that. But as I'm getting older and I'm like, I don't know about retiring. I'd rather do what I love to do and just carry on doing that because I love to do it. And who needs to retire if you're really doing what you love to do, right? But there is an aspect of giving myself rest all along, as opposed to, even though it's easy when we are doing what we love to do to want to do it more because of that societal conditioning that you always do more of it and not allow for the rest. Even though you love doing it, you do still need to rest, right? So my body is reminding me of that. And as I get older, that becomes more and more important. And there's cyclical qualities to rest. So I would love to hear some of your insights about that so I can see it bursting out of you.
Yeah. Firstly, is this car super loud in the recording?
No, okay. Not too bad.
It's pretty loud in here, just making sure. But anyway, that brings up a really good point in my head, because we don't necessarily get permission, right, from those that we seek permission from, to say that we love to rest, or that we love to take periods of rest. Like, this is my, you know, April and May is my rest period, or something like that. We don't acknowledge how much we actually love to lay around sometimes. And so we're not open and honest with ourselves about what we want because of these things that we are looking for permission for. Right? It's a privilege to be able to put your head down in the classroom when you're in school. It's a privilege to, you know, to pursue your real passion, what you love to do in your late teens, early 20s. It's a privilege to be able to do these things in the mouth of greater society. And so, you know, not being ruled by the fear of loss of money, not being ruled by the fear of loss of access to places and things, is sort of a test within itself, with how quickly are you willing to grow within this womb of that you created of your current environment, and how much of that process are you willing to surrender to a greater mind, to surrender to a greater heart, and to surrender to a greater intelligence.
That's a very poignant aspect of all of this, that surrendering to this intelligence that we can't necessarily understand all the parts of. And I would say, because guess what? I'm the founder of the Womb-Centered Healing Temple, and this is the Womb-Centered Healing Podcast, that greater intelligence resides and connects with us in our wombs. And that when we try to understand, for example, what's happening with womb cycles, and by the way, I consider that men have wombs too. It's an energetic womb. It's a spiritual womb. Okay. So, what's that?
Works for me.
Yes. And that because we can connect, we can all connect with that, no matter what our gender is, no matter the condition of our body. Many women have lost their uteruses nowadays for, you know, medical reasons and all of this, but those women still have that energetic womb as well.
Right.
And it's very powerful to connect with that, because there's a greater intelligence there. We actually have more nerve tissue in our bellies than we actually have in our brain. And so it really truly is, on a biological level, a greater intelligence down in the womb space. And so it takes a bit of surrender when we've been taught our whole lives that our mind, or thinking, logical thinking, which actually is only a very small portion, 5-10% of our brain, of our actual brains, are responsible for and involved in logical thinking. But we're taught that that small portion of our brains is the end all and be all of all human intelligence, and that's what's going to solve all of your problems, and that's how you're going to be able to be successful in life, is by completely relying on that logical thinking brain. And so
that really sorry to cut in, that really
please.
Yes, that really comes from fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from fear of, but I don't know what's going to happen next.
That's right.
There's many things that we do accept and kind of take for granted that we know will happen next, like the next day, and you'll actually wake up, or your next 50 heartbeats will actually happen. And we just believe on a gut level, I like to say, not on a mental level, we believe that that's going to happen. Yes.
Sorry, this is like really...
Yes, let's bounce off each other. Let's do it.
Okay.
Popcorn.
With all of this that we're talking about, sometimes, we have to go beyond our emotions and beyond our thoughts that are those like limiting beliefs, those limiting emotions, those doubts and fears. We have to begin to allow ourselves to be greater than that, to start to be more creative in our thinking. What would it feel like to feel fulfilled in life and things like that? Really asking those questions in order to help in that healing process, in that incubation, in that transitionary process. Because otherwise we find ourselves in those cycles of repeating the same thing that our grandparents did, that happened 500 years ago, that happened thousands of years ago.
Pretty
Those
old
same
grandpa.
kind of, I wouldn't be on that. We find ourselves repeating those same emotional triggers, those
Yes.
same emotional cycles that we go through. Every day it like goes like a loop until we start to go beyond that.
Yeah, well, and how we go beyond that, right, is accepting that there is more unknown than known in life, and that you yourself, or me myself, is more unknown than known. I have no idea how I grow my own hair, yet I do it every second of every day. You know, stuff like that. I have no idea how I grew my bones, yet I do it every second of every day. And repair, you know, all of there's what, 10 million cells die every 1 second, and 10 million cells are reborn every 1 second. So it's like, you know, there's so much going on with this, as we call it, greater intelligence, that we essentially are, right? But we identify really heavily with that thinking brain, with that 5 to 8% of the neurological activity. And once we are able to place more identity on the unknown, on the unexpected, on the what we would call unreal, then we meet the magic in life. We meet the surreal, you could say.
And we meet freedom. That's where we meet freedom. Yeah. What were you going to say?
I was saying, when we focus on that underlying energy, like the source of the womb energy, the source of the intelligence, the source of what everything that we are, essentially our essence. When we bring the focus back on that, all of these things start to kind of fall away and dissolve. All these troubles, all of this thinking that you're in this box.
No doubt.
Indeed. And I find that you know, in my experience, that remembering that I can surrender into the mysterious workings of that greater intelligence that my logical brain can't conceive of, can't know about, can't understand. My logical brain can certainly try to know, understand, but if I let that run the show, and then I'm limiting myself severely. Whereas if I allow myself to drop into the mystery, especially the mystery of the womb, that's all about that, creating this essence in the dark mystery of the unknown, and allow my life to be an emanation of that, instead of trying to direct it and, you know, control it and, you know, make sure things are happening the way. And I see, like, my grandmother, the one that's alive right now still, you know, when we get older, there's when our physical faculties are starting to retire, if you will. As we get older, we don't have enough energy anymore to maintain these controlling mechanisms. I mean, that takes a lot of work, especially around emotions that we're not supposed to feel, so we're going to stuff them down, or, you know, memories that we tried to push out of our awareness and just, you know, and not attend to. But they're really kind of running the show through these coping mechanisms. I'm going to have everything planned and controlled and all of this. And my grandmother now is suffering from, you know, basically panic attacks quite frequently, and, you know, high blood pressure, and a lot of these things that are from she's too tired to do those coping mechanisms anymore. And so, you know, the family's trying to help her to learn some strategies now, to deal with that backlog of stuff that she was that happened that she just stuffed away to the side because she had a plan and everything was supposed to go to plan. And so, discover that,
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, were you done? I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to ask if the two of you have some experiences, because, she can talk to me about this I think she's in her mid 80s, but as far as implementing any new strategies, it's really hard for her to do that because it was such a long habit of doing it that other way. And so people like yourselves and myself, I saw that. I know myself personally. I'd love to hear your story of how you saw that, wait a second, the way I'm being taught to do things and to think about things and to be about things, not quite working the way it's all looking like everybody thinks it's cracked up to be. And I've got to find something different. Like, what inspired us in our 20s to say, you know what, I'm not going to do it like that because that didn't work. And so I'm curious, I know my story about that, but I'm curious about yours.
Yeah. So first thing, I also think that surrender is the other side of the coin of intention. So you have intention, and you must have surrender on the other side of that coin. What that means, basically, in practical terms, is if you intend to rid yourself and rid your average day from panic attacks, then keep your intention and surrender the how and the when to a greater intelligence, to a greater mind, and to a greater heart. Same with, if I want to get really, really good at a sport, keep the intention while I practice, but surrender certain how-tos to a greater intelligence. And then you'll find that the coach at school doesn't coach you as well as your big cousin who you never talked to until you got into basketball. Stuff like the weird magic, like I said, magic starts to happen.
That's where miracles happen, right? When we surrender. Exactly.
Of that intention coin that we call surrender. And so,
is that a true story, Saul, about the basketball, or do you?
Well, not in my life, but you could say with writing, that I experienced some magic with that, where I held the intention that I wanted to get really good at writing poetry because I started out just writing music, and I went and I ended up joining a student-run organization in college that by the second semester from the first semester that I joined them, I was like leagues above where I was in writing poetry. And it was sounds like a small thing, but it's not. For anybody that gets on stage, when you're leagues above where you were. When you certain things about stage fright, certain things about memorization problems fade away, you know it's magic happening. You know that you can't make this happen. Something is happening to you for the better, basically. And so we have really good news for grandma, that you don't have to make yourself not feel anything. And you can be more of what I call the observer of a panic attack happening. Even if your body is doing weird things, you don't have to try and make it stop. You can simply, I call it, laugh at it. But it doesn't mean force yourself to laugh and try to force yourself to be happy before you begin to laugh. It means, well, you know that you don't want it to happen, so it's not you doing it, and you can just watch and laugh, and it's like a natural laugh. And so,
is there a time when you discovered that kind of strategy for yourself that you can share about with us?
Yes. I was always put in the friend zone when it came to finding a life partner, when it came to finding a woman.
Wow, you were put in the friend zone. That sounds like, like the doghouse or something.
Well, I was 3 years straight. 3 years straight of because I've never been really loose with my heart like that. I've been exposed to people, and I've tried to be kind of loose with my heart, but it doesn't work. I'm just a relationship guy, you could say. I like the the one-to-one, let's grow together type of thing when it comes to relationships. And so that's what my intention was on, but I didn't have the other side of the intention coin that I call surrender. I was trying to, what's the strategy to lock her in so that once I lock her in, then I can just let go, because now she's in and I know I'm a great guy. I know I'm cool.
How did you lock them in? How did you try to lock them in?
No, it didn't work. I had
What did you try though? I want to know what you tried that didn't work.
Well, okay. Well, we're talking about college here. So
okay, I understand. Yes, this is in the past. Because obviously you're here with Tenci, so that changed. But I want to hear what your unsuccessful strategies for locking them in were.
Yeah. So trying to listen to advice from people that are very loose with their heart and trying to apply it to myself. Meaning, when they told me, here's how you offer a drink or offer to buy a drink to a woman, it would be in a very suggestive masculine taking over the feminine psyche type of way, spitting game, you could say, very control the situation type of way that doesn't really fit into my personality type, which is let's unfold together. And so I really don't want to get too far into too many details. But
no, you don't have to tell me the details. I gotcha.
Yeah.
So how did that shift then? When did you start to feel how you could just have your intention and then surrender? What did that look like when you discovered your own more successful way of having that relationship that you wanted to have?
Yeah. So what happened is I was successful in a couple one-night stands that were horrible experiences. That were, either I woke up feeling like I was degrading someone, and treating them less than human, or some type of drama immediately entered my life or our situation together or whatever. And it was like a million light bulbs went off in my head that I've been forcing the situation for years now. And maybe if it's not, and I realized my desire to have a woman by my side that really loves and cares about me for me was not going to go away if I stopped trying to force the situation, because I think that was my fear, was if I stop trying to force it, then I'll be alone. Right? And so you come to a point where you're like, okay, I can keep going the way that I'm going, or I can give it all up and let's see what happens. And that really is the surrender, because you're gonna give it all up, but for some magical, miraculous reason, what's true to you doesn't leave. You can't give it up because it's true to you.
Indeed. Isn't that so? When we give it up, we say, okay, I give up.
Just take it.
Really
oh my gosh.
Thank goodness. So I want to hear. So of course, then you gave it all up. Your true self came out. You met Tenci, and the rest is history. Is that how it all went?
It kind of, sort of. I met one. So moving here to Texas, when you move to a different state or a different place, something psychologically happens where you reinvent. Like she was talking about, you reinvent yourself. So there was a second time me reinventing myself, because I went to school a 12-hour drive away from my hometown. Then I moved to here to Austin, Texas, which is a 24-hour drive away from my hometown.
Wow.
So I met somebody before I met Tenci here in Texas, and it was kind of the job that I came down here for was in construction, and so I was around a lot of masculine, make stuff happen energy, and I had already locked in 2.5, 3 years of make stuff happen with women
practice
strategy, you could say. So in my rebirth here in Texas, I started to bring some old strategies with me, and I forced the situation. I met this woman. She was really sweet, but who I did not like. But she, showed some interest, and I was like, okay, well, let's just see, let's just make it happen, and then I'll probably end up changing her or something like that. Was swimming, foolishness was going on, and so we were coming together for a couple weeks. I realized I don't like the way she takes care of her child. I don't like the way she keeps her room. I don't like anything about her except for her body. And and she got a kind of a cute face. And so that was like, okay, I'm not gonna do this again. Right. And it wasn't a decision I made where I knew what was coming next. Right? Because complete surrender or true surrender is not where you go into the known, you go straight into the unknown. And so I let that go. And when I met Tenci, I got tested by Grace, you could say. Grace tested me because we met. I introduced myself in a way that I definitely made myself noticed. And then I asked for her number, and she didn't give it to me. She gave me her Facebook.
Tenci.
She didn't give me her. She gave me her Facebook. So I had to accept that, and I had to relax a little bit. And one of my favorite quotes in the world is, "Even if you're scared, go scared." And I just had to go scared, and we ended up getting married a year and a half later, 2 years later.
Oh my goodness. So, we're getting towards the end of our time. Is it all right? Because I am dying to hear the other side of this story. Is it all right if we take a few more minutes? Because I know listeners are going to be disappointed if we don't hear the Tenci version of this, and where surrender and this intention followed by surrender and maybe other principles, womb healing, sacred masculine feminine dance of union and reunion, how did that all come into play for you in meeting soul and in that process?
Yes. Ooh. Okay, so when I met Soul, I already had my life planned out. Like,
no.
My full-time job was lined up in California. I was going to be moving there from Texas shortly after I met him. Like a few months after, I had already planned I was going to be moving, and that was happening.
Yeah, like in January or something.
Yeah, but then like when my mom was having her whole health crisis, everything kind of shook up, and he was there, and he was like an awesome person and just a great support. And I was like, well, I can't really go. So I was like in a warring between, but my plan. My life is gonna be like this. And that was like one of the little mini kind of instances of having the intention, and then having also to gracefully surrender to just the moment and to the beauty of the natural blossoming of our relationship, and the natural blossoming of allowing my mom to have her freedom and heal through her sickness, through all that was happening with her. And for when my time came to have I had a whole after my mom healed, I had this whole period of time where I was just like, well, what do I do? What do I do now? Who am I? Like, oh my gosh, what?
Right.
Trying to piece everything together, my usual way of, okay, when things go wrong, this is what I do. Okay, I'm gonna put this over here, and then it's gonna work. It's gonna work, right? And it didn't work. When everything just was crumbling down inside of me is how I viewed it, even though outside looking in, it was perfectly fine. Like nothing was really happening. But inside of me, it felt like everything was crumbling down. I was completely, everything I did, nothing was working in terms of trying to piece things together with
For example,
my career. Yeah, I was gonna be an accountant. I was gonna do all these things and follow all of the rules and of a responsible person and not follow my dreams until 20 years later.
When you get to the retirement phase or later on, right?
But there was so much like inside me headbutt of no, this don't feel right. This don't feel right. Oh, and then me trying to like make it work. And then realizing, no, this is not.
And I was pretty free already when we met. So some of my energy kind of blended with hers as well as we grew together.
And he was like, it's okay.
I was like, no. If you don't know what's going on tomorrow, just be happy you woke up. No, let's just see what the day brings. You know.
Right.
No, it was a
big shift. And it sounds to me like that you're describing what happens to a lot of people when they discover, and myself included, the limitations of the logical mind, where, you know, we're taught that the logical mind, making a plan, like we were talking about earlier, is the thing that's going to give you the solutions to everything as you go. But when life is constantly not logical and things happen, and there are other things of value in life that are more along the feminine, in the feminine realm, like, for example, the budding relationship between you and this beautiful man, and your family, right? Mm-hmm. Your family and the struggles that your family was having. And if those of you who are curious, we're all talking like we know about this story. We do, because we had in the interview for the Embodied Shakti Summit, we talked all about Tenci's mom and this health crisis that brought the two of them together. So if you want to learn that story, you'll have to sign up for the Embodied Shakti Summit, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it is juicy, and it's a really great story, very inspiring to me. And so these things that happen for you, it's like life comes in and rescues us from ourselves. Sometimes, right? It's like, no, you want to be a CPA and do all this stuff with this line of reasoning and system of values that's not really truly yours.
It was not.
It was not.
A breaking down of all of the untruths, all of the things I was holding on to for comfort, for security, for as a coping mechanism.
Yeah,
I was holding on to all of these things, and they were all breaking, falling away, falling away. And it was the most beautiful thing, because if that didn't happen like how it did, I would have probably still been trying to make it happen, you know?
Right. And so in that transformation, like the caterpillar inside the chrysalis, right? Everything, the structure of the caterpillar's body just dissolves into a puddle of green goop. And then you have to just imagine what you're going to become in that puddle of green goop. And you don't even know what color your wings are going to be. And then there's the opening when it's time to get out. You're too big and it's uncomfortable, and you're trying to get out of the chrysalis, and it has to squeeze you out. You have to squeeze out, like the process of birth squeezes all the juices into your wings so that they can develop more fruitfully. I use this metaphor a lot, so I could go on and on about the butterfly metaphor. What was that?
Yeah, and there has to be that struggle when you're in the incubation period of your own womb healing, your own healing journey. There has to be that struggle and that period of reflection, or else you won't be able to fly. Like the caterpillar, if it doesn't have that struggle of trying to get out of the cocoon, then it will just die because it can't fly.
There'll be no strength back there.
Even if the wings strong enough.
Yeah, even if the wings are fully grown, there'll be no strength in the back. So or abdomen, I guess, if in any technique.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Wow. So thank you so much. I could sit and chat with you all afternoon, but I just want to mention that you folks can get in touch with Tenci and Soul. Tell us your website again.
Yes. So two things we'd like to say. One is the main email address is info, I-N-F-O, @ufuluchild.com. And the website is, of course, ufuluchild.com. So if you're, our name is spelled correctly in the title of this podcast. And if you want to just hear it, it's UFULU and then child spelled out .com.
Absolutely.
Okay, beautiful. So, and also, we have it on the schedule that I'll be appearing in your weekly live show. So if you're interested in, what's that?
Next Monday, March 18th.
March 18th, next Monday. So reach out to me, Sama Morningstar, on Facebook, or reach out to Ufulu Child there at their website to find out about their weekly show. If you want to listen to that, you have a weekly wellness show, and we'll probably carry on our discussion and some aspect of it there. And we also have a wonderful interview in the Embodied Shakti Summit. So you can sign up for that summit at embodiedshaktisummit.com. Shakti is spelled S-H-A-K-T-I. So embodiedshaktisummit.com. So I look forward to seeing all of you there. And any last words of wisdom, intention, or prayer before we wrap it up today for the podcast?
Yes, I wanted to say also, you guys definitely you're going to just love this entire summit that's happening, the Embodied Shakti Summit. Be sure to sign up because you might just get some little free goodies along the way from multiple people, multiple speakers. I just wanted to say that. Mm-hmm. So really look forward to that. Just open yourself up to that experience. And we also want to end with our Freedom Seeker Manifesto, if you're open to.
Yes,
call
please.
and response.
Awesome. So you'll just repeat after us, and anybody listening, you'll repeat with Mama Sama. Right?
All right. Awesome.
I create my own well-being.
I create my own well-being.
I define my own destiny.
I define my own destiny.
I live for freedom.
I live for freedom.
Because I am free to be.
I am free to be.
And that makes us freedom seekers.
That makes us freedom seekers. Yay. Beautiful. I love it. Awesome. Maybe I need to come up with a womb-centered healing manifesto too. We can do that one too.
Why not? Go ahead.
All right. I'm on the assignment. We'll see how long it takes to come through. I've set the intention. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. We got a little delay going, I guess.
Yeah,
I said, if you need help, I'm a good writer.
I'm a good writer too, though. I'm a good writer too, but maybe we get together and we come up with something together if you want to contribute. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you, listeners, for joining us. We look forward to seeing you here, sharing with you at future events and possibly seeing you. We're going to have some live group events at the summit too. So be sure to sign up so you find out all about the future opportunities to connect. And thank you all so much. That's all for now. Until next time.